and welcome everybody. These days, people are getting more conscious about health and diet, but still, there are a lot of myths need to be debunked, as more concerning things like whether we should have pink salt or white salt, brown sugar or white sugar. So, to debunk all these myths, I have invited once again Yuri Bhaga in my show, who is a registered dietitian and running a site called Happy Food Dietitian. So let's welcome her.
Hi.
Hi, Yuri. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks. And you?
I'm good. Thank you so much. First of all, thanks a lot to take out time for another session.
It's a pleasure. No worries.
Okay. So we're going to start from here. Would you please explain briefly about anti-inflammatory foods and what does it mean and what effects do they have on our body?
Right. So recently there has been lots of speak about anti-inflammatory foods and anti-inflammatory diets. And I think they can be quite important, but just for the general healthy person, I don't think there needs to be too much of a focus on anti-inflammatory foods because they are in our everyday foods that you eat. So if you think of an anti-inflammatory food, you're mostly going to think about things like antioxidants, omega-3 fatty acids, sort of those healthy fats, even something like as basic as fiber. Just because the way they break down in the gut can actually help regarding reducing, inflammation. And that comes into play, especially when you have, a medical condition where you want to be focusing on trying to reduce any added inflammation in the body. So, for example, something like PCOS. So, as I was saying, the three main things that I would focus on is antioxidants, omega-3s, and fiber. So, antioxidants, basically, if you think of your fruits and veggies, so those colorful, different colors you see in your fruits and veggies, because those different colors kind of correlate to specific nutrients. We call them phytonutrients, phytochemicals, and they have, a number of them antioxidant properties, which helps with sort of reducing or getting rid of waste in the body and sort of inflammatory processes and just making sure the body's running as efficiently as it should be. So, for example, if you think of something like blueberries or your red or orange vegetables, tomatoes, sweet potatoes, those colorful ones specifically, then omega-3 is very important, very potent, very difficult to get in the diet because you find them mostly in fish and don't like fish, and specifically, oily, fatty fish. So you think more salmon, and salmon in this country is very, very expensive. So not the most affordable thing if you need to be having it 2 to 3 times a week, which is sort of the recommended amount if you want to meet that omega-3 need. But then you can also get obviously more affordable sources, but they can be quite fishy, so people don't enjoy them. So pilchards, sardines, those types of things. And for example, if someone is plant-based or vegetarian, then obviously that's going to be very hard to get it in as well. So some people, if you are actually vegetarian, then you would have to supplement omega-3s, omega-6s, all of that. And then fiber, and most people aren't getting in enough fiber, looking at whole grains and vegetables, all of that, because lots of the time, if we're focusing on sort of the refined carbohydrates, they're taking out that good fibers from those products. But basically, yeah, those are a breakdown of briefly anti-inflammatory type foods you can get in your normal sort of day-to-day diet.
Okay, so to my understanding, what do you think? We shouldn't focus a lot on anti-inflammatory diet just to make a part of a daily or weekly intake. We shouldn't focus on that.
Okay. You should focus on a well-balanced diet. And if you are having a well-balanced, varied diet, you will be getting these foods in. If from what I've said, if someone's not getting in sufficient amount of those types of foods, then you would want to make an effort to get in some of that. But unless you have a medical condition where you need to be specifically focusing on increasing anti-inflammatory foods, you just want to get in the normal, regular amount and it should be fine.
Okay, so now there is a most common buzzword and which has segued in the present era of healthy lifestyle, and that is a superfood, such as chia seeds or almond butter or avocado. So what about it? If are they really superfoods? And if we won't have it, so we're not going to have the healthy lifestyle or healthy diet in our life?
I like this question. I've actually done a whole hour-long webinar on this topic just because there's so much to say on it. And it's really just like you said, buzzword. It's a marketing gimmick. It's really something to push sales and make the big food manufacturers money. Because at the end of the day, the benefit you can get from a superfood, for example, chia seeds, you can get the same benefit from any other food that you're just getting at the normal grocery store. It just doesn't have that sort of exciting label around it. So with that being said, it makes people think maybe it's not as healthy for me. That is not the case at all. Superfood is just a marketing gimmick. There's no definition for what a superfood is. There's nothing that says A, B, and C, and then that makes something a superfood. Superfoods are generally things that are more nutrient dense, are full of micronutrients, usually a bit lower calorie. So if you just go off that kind of a definition, that would be your things like vegetables, your colorful veggies, again with the antioxidants. Things like chia seeds, as you mentioned, so they were very popular. They started coming to popularity a few years back, and now you can find them more in your regular grocery stores. But before, you could only find them at your more specialty stores. Yes. So as things become more trendy, then they kind of become less exciting, and then the new superfood becomes the popular one. And you'll see there's just like a wave of, there's always something new. But if you look at the nutritional composition, chia seeds, for example, it's popular because it has a high amount of omega-3s, plant-based omega-3s, and it's a healthy fat, basically. But you could get that same benefit if you were having a handful of almonds, or if you're having mixed nuts or walnuts, or whatever it may be. So there's no need to say if you're not having superfoods that you're not healthy, because you probably would get the same benefit from just making sure you're filling a healthy trolley at your normal sort of down the road grocery store instead of the fancier, more health version store. So yeah.
All right. Okay, now what about brain food again? Like suppose if we'll be having it and after having this, our brain would work like in Einstein?
So I think there's now emphasis on it because there's lots of research going on into how having certain foods or having enough of certain foods can maybe prevent sort of conditions that come along with aging, so Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia, and looking to see if our diets can kind of slow down that regression or the progress of these types of diseases and disorders, as well as brain food in the context of mental health and mental illnesses such as depression and anxiety and so forth, because it is fairly well documented that if we're having unhealthy diets, so lots of sugars, lots of fats, very processed, so basically too much of the not so good stuff, it can actually exacerbate and make sort of symptoms in people that have, for example, depression, anxiety. If you're having too much sugar, it can make it worse. So it's a little bit of both. And in terms of what you should be including to try and prevent these things that help sort of reduce symptoms. Obviously, there's no diet that's going to say if you eat these foods, you're going to be smarter, you're going to have better brain function, you're not going to have depression. But there are things you can do to kind of help reduce the impact if you are diagnosed with these things. So that goes back to, again, it's mostly the research that's currently being done is in omega-3s. We don't know the exact mechanisms, but we have a feeling it's probably more something to do with how, it's anti-inflammatory in nature, as I was saying. So going back to this oily fatty fish, healthy oils, so avocados, nuts, seeds, walnuts, your chia seeds, you want to be getting in your omega-3s, or basically your essential fatty acids into your diet. And I think there's emphasis on it because most people just on a general, Western type diet that most people are having, we aren't getting enough of that, as well as with fiber, because there's something known as the gut-brain axis. So if we have an unhappy gut, there is some new science saying that it can actually impact, brain functioning and mood and so forth. So if you're not getting enough fiber, that's obviously going to set you sort of back in terms of trying to eat for your best brain health. So yeah.
Okay. Another question would I would just like to ask in the sense that why should we focus more on plant-based food? Is it so much important to?
Yeah, so unlike the other sort of diets that have popped up at the moment, keto, intermittent fasting, and they've been posed as being very healthy and you must do it, they would be considered more or less fads because it's, for short-term gain. They don't really explain why it's important. And we know it's not sustainable. It's not for everyone. Unlike plant-based foods or the plant-based eating trend, that's not really a diet. We're just saying most of the time we should be focusing on plant sources instead of animal sources. And there's a number of benefits for this. So it is important, it is beneficial. And that's simply because if we're having lots of meat, specifically red meat, usually it's a very high source of saturated fats, which is not so good for heart health. So by reducing the animal sources or animal products in the diet and then then rather replacing that with plant sources, we're helping reduce the saturated fats, while at the same time we're increasing, fiber, healthy carbs, probably cutting out other processed foods at the same time. So it's sort of a win-win. And yeah, basically having a predominantly plant-based diet is beneficial for overall health, gut health, heart health, helping to reduce certain risk of certain cancers. So there's a multitude of benefits for focusing more on plants. So even if it's like if you're currently having meat every day, you could go with a 50-50 approach and trying to say maybe one meal a day, I'm going to try and at least half my meat, or maybe one meal I'm going to try without meat. If you're very new to it, just say one day a week. I'm sure you've all heard of meatless Mondays at this point. So, just small steps to try and go to a more predominantly plant sources in our day-to-day diet. There's no need to cut things out completely if you don't want to go vegetarian. That's not what we're saying. It's just that there are health benefits and obviously environmental benefits for choosing more plants.
Okay. Now, what about, let's say, in the choices, white salt or pink salt? So what could be the difference or nutrition value of both, and what is better from a health point of view?
So from a health point of view, if you look at it at the nitty-gritty, one is not actually better than the other. So with the pink salt or the Himalayan salt, the people that promote the salt say that it is healthier because there are more minerals and it's got more natural trace elements, and because of that it makes it better than your regular white salt. And while it's true it does have a little bit more of the minerals, you're never going to be having so much salt that those minerals are actually going to impact you significantly. If you're having that much salt, you're going to cause other health problems. So salt and normal cooking amounts a little bit here and there, there's really no difference, because the thing that sort of salt puts us at risk for, the sodium, if we're having too much of that, is the same in pink salt and white salt. So regardless of whichever salt you're using, if you need to be looking out for your salt or sodium intake, for example, if you have a risk for heart disease or hypertension, choosing the pink salt over the white salt isn't going to help you in that regard. So it really is up to choice. And then just important to note, some of the more natural, organic or pink salts aren't regulated. So, it's hard to know what's going into them or what's not going into them. Because, for example, here we predominantly use iodized salt, and that's because in the past we used to have issues with iodine deficiency. So,
yes.
As many of our salts are iodized, and there is a reason for that. So it's also just something to keep in mind.
Okay, now same for brown sugar and white sugar. What could be the healthier choice and why?
So same thing here. White sugar is essentially just bleached. It's refined a little bit more. But in terms of, when we eat sugars, our body doesn't know if it's blue, pink, black, white, whatever. It doesn't. Into the body, it's just added sugar. It's going to be dissolved. It's going to give us an insulin spike, and our body's going to sort of respond to it the same way. So if you swap over to brown sugar and think, oh, I can have more of this because it's healthier, unfortunately, I have some news for you. You probably want to reduce that intake, because at the end of the day, if you're still having too much, whether it's white or brown sugar, if you're having, it's going to increase your risk for weight gain, extra calories, type 2 diabetes, all of that. So at the end of the day, all in moderation, doesn't matter which one you pick.
Okay, now let's talk about the cooking oil again. Now we are going to debunk with this as well. Like, suppose a lot more awareness been spreading about coconut oil, that people are saying that it's a healthier choice as compared to the yellow oil. And I myself, I started to use coconut oil like for about a year by skipping that yellow oil. So what would you talk about this, and please share your thoughts on this.
So we always say when it comes to oils, pick a plant-based oil because it's better than, for example, butter or cream when you're cooking, because those are saturated fats. But then as the years have gone by, coconut oil started to take things by storm. It became very popular. And then we had to say all plant oils, or dietitians would say all plant oils except coconut oil, because coconut oil is actually a source of a saturated fat. It's bad fat. So just like butter and cream, it has a high amount of that type of fat, which can, if you're having it too much in your diet, can increase your levels of the LDL, or the bad cholesterol, which is what we don't want. In small amounts, it's okay to use if that's your preference, because it does have a slightly different taste. It can sort of flavor your food. But at the end of the day, if you're using it quite a lot every day in everything that you're, preparing, it can add up. And preferably you actually want to pick more your other plant oil. So thinking, avocado or canola oil, even sunflower oil, because at the end of the day, you shouldn't be using so much oil or fats in general. And if you are, then you want to be picking sort of the non-coconut oil versions. And lots of people will say, they've actually seen better results on the coconut oil, or they, when coconut oil became popular, there were a number of studies which showed, it actually improved heart health. But the populations that these studies were done in were, rural areas in East Asia where, people do a lot of hard labor. There's not a lot of processed foods. We're not sure if it was the coconut oil that gave that, positive outcome, or was it their overall lifestyle because they weren't eating KFC, McDonald's, etc. on a daily basis. So it's hard to say.
Okay. Yeah, we had to debunk about this. And then, people used to understand that, okay, now coconut oil, and now I have to just finish that up soon. And of course, I will just come back to the yellow oil again. Okay, now let's talk about lemon water. Consuming lemon water on an empty stomach, does it really help to reduce weight? Or it does? So what could be the side effects in our body?
All right, yeah. So the lemon water has been around forever, and it's not the worst habit to do because it's a way to get water, and most people aren't getting in the minimum required amount of water. So if it's a way for you to increase your water intake, start your day with a nice glass of water, keeping you hydrated, get things moving, help with good bowel movement, all of that early in the day, that's fantastic. But if you're drinking it with the idea that, it's going to burn the fat around my belly, or it's going to kickstart my weight loss, that is then, not exactly the mindset you should be going in. You should rather just be having it because water is healthy, and the lemon helps me get water because it's a bit more flavorful. There's no science to back that lemon water is going to help you lose weight or lose fat or anything like that. It's not going to kickstart anything. And it is quite acidic. So if you're having, lots and lots and lots of lemon water, the impact on your teeth enamel can be quite bad, and it can actually damage your teeth in that way, and dentists will always speak about this. So if you are doing lemon water throughout the day, a straw might not be a bad idea, unless you are really adding lots and excess amounts of lemon or lemon juice to your water. It's probably not going to do anything in terms of acidity. But if you're someone that maybe from a thing like heartburn or ulcers and it's a trigger food for you, then obviously you don't put yourself through that. But if it's a way that encourages you to just get in more water, then sure, it's fine. But just remember, it's not going to be a miracle quick fix for weight loss. You'll have to make a few other adjustments in addition to that. And it's not because of the lemon, it's just because water is healthy.
Okay, now same for apple cider vinegar. What would you say about that?
Same story, literally the exact same story. I mean, apple cider vinegar has been shown to have improvements with a number of other medical conditions, but, very small scale studies, nothing, confirmed. But in terms of weight loss, I think the idea that because it's so acidic and it kind of burns when it goes down, and after you have it, you kind of don't have an appetite just because it's so strong. Lots of the time people will lose weight on it, but it's usually because they just don't feel like eating after having such a strong tasting thing in the morning. It might put them off a little bit. But yeah, again, in terms of burning fat or burning through fat cells or increasing metabolism, that isn't really scientific based. It's more of a habit thing that helps people be healthier. And that's sometimes why you see the results you do.
Okay, Yuri, I'm going to leave it there now. And I'm sure this discussion would help a lot of my viewers for understanding the facts and information about healthy food choices. So thank you so much, Yuri. And I would get connected. I would get connected with you for more and more sessions like this, in future.
That's
but for now, it's a pleasure to have you, and take good care of yourself.
Great. Thanks for having me. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.